You might ask yourself why the orders we showed in part 1 are so important for our fall of the Cabal. Well, you know the expression, know thy enemy? In order to understand the magnificence of their elite plan and the magnitude of their evil intent, we must first identify whom we are dealing with here. There is so much misinformation going around, not only on the internet, but also in our history books. That, by the way, were never written by neutral observers, but always by the winners. If you don't understand where the Cabal comes from, how far back they go in history, if you don't know how we were led to believe that all of these orders and movements were separate entities that came and went in history, independently and rather harmlessly, then you will most certainly not understand nor believe the true identity of the Cabal. You will miss the fact that we find ourselves at the final stage of their master plan. And if you don't fully comprehend in which danger we find ourselves, you will not know what to do at the moment suprême. That is why we make this documentary, so you can wake up, see through all the lies, and take action to claim your sovereignty back. That's when you'll understand what we said in the previous series. History books will have to be rewritten. Okay, let's see where and when our two storylines meet, shall we? It was in 1748 in southern Germany, Bavaria, in a small town called Ingolstadt. A boy was born. His name was Johann Adam Weishaupt. At the age of 5, his father died. The Jesuits took him under their wings and groomed Adam, who turned out to be a highly intelligent and strong-minded individual, to become a professor in canon law at the Jesuit University of Ingolstadt. He rewrote ancient historical documents in which the ideology of Lucifer would eventually lead to the complete control of the world. In 1773, a secret meeting took place between Meyer Amschel Rothschild and a select group of 12 elite Khazarian bankers and businessmen. Remember Rothschild, key player in our first storyline? The excessively wealthy and powerful Ashkenazi Khazarian banker from Frankfurt? Well, Rothschild proposed to join forces and riches with the purpose of world dominance. He had set his eye on Adam Weishaupt, who would be perfect to implement their plans in practice and run their organization. And so, on May the 1st, 1776, Adam Weishaupt founded the Bund der Perfektibilisten, the Order of the Perfectionists, later to be called the Order of the Illuminati. It was the fusion of the financial empire of the Rothschilds and the wealth and power of the military order of the Jesuits. Their goal? The creation of a world government and world dominance. Although Weishaupt's name is commonly known among those who study this material, not many people are aware of the fact that he based his Order of the Illuminati on ancient documents, one of which was a letter that was given to him by Rothschild. This letter, referred to as the Constantinople letter, was old and of extreme value to the Ashkenazim. It was 287 years old, written in 1489 by the Nazi, the chairman of the Jewish High Council in Constantinople, as a response to an outcry for help by the head of the Ashkenazi Jews in France. Remember the Khazarians who had fled Russia and who had changed their name to Ashkenazi Jews? They now felt threatened by the other ethnic groups in France. The king had even told them they had to convert to Christianity. The reply of the Nazi in the Constantinople letter was as follows. As for what you say that the King of France obliges you to become Christians, do it, since you cannot do otherwise, but let the law of Moses be kept in your hearts. As for what you say about the demand to despoil you of your goods, Make your sons merchants, that little by little they may despoil the Christians of theirs. As for what you say about their making attempts on your lives, make your sons doctors and apothecaries, that they may take away Christian lives. As for what you say about their destroying your synagogues, make your sons canons and clerics, in order that they may destroy their churches. As for the many other vexations you complain of, arrange that your sons become advocates and lawyers, and see that they always mix themselves up with the affairs of state, in order that by putting Christians under your yoke, you may dominate the world and be avenged on them. Do not swerve from this order we give you, for you will find by experience that, humiliated as you are now, you will reach the actuality of power. In other words, they were told to fake and make-believe conversion and to infiltrate every aspect of society: commerce, medicine, religion, and legislation, with the sole purpose of revenge and destruction. How Khazarian! Adam Weishaupt founded the Order of the Illuminati in 1776, financed by the Rothschilds, based on this letter, that, by the way, was based on an even older document, more about which in Part 4. 1 year later, in 1777, Weishaupt joined the Grand Orient Masonic Lodge. He made over 2,000 Jesuits head of the many lodges across the world, thus establishing a massive empire of power, in which the Jesuit order was the spider in the web. Weishaupt then officially left the Jesuit order, so that no suspicion would ever be drawn to the involvement of the Roman Catholic Church and a Jesuit council in the illustrious plans of the Illuminati. The Rothschilds used their riches to finance wars, as they had found out that by financing both sides of each and every war, they would always win financially. They knew no scruples, no mercy. The alliance of the Luciferian Khazars and the Jesuit order had only just begun. Their goals? Personal gain, wealth and power. The submission of the royal families. The annihilation of the infidels. Protestants, Calvinists, atheists, Muslims, Jews, in other words, the destruction of all religions except the Roman Catholic faith. The destruction of all governments, world dominance of the Pope, and revenge. Revenge on each and every one who had ever betrayed them. Revenge on Russia, first and foremost, the country that had expelled the Khazars. But not only that. Remember the vengeance of the Jesuits on the Pope, who had betrayed them? Well, they weren't done just yet. For the European kings of France, Spain, England, Austria, and so on, who had banned the Jesuit order, were about to have a taste of their wrath. The first pawn the Illuminati alliance put forward was Napoleon Bonaparte. The fact that the French Revolution was indeed orchestrated by elite secret societies was documented and proven by the French Jesuit Augustin Baruel. He wrote an influential account in which he focused in particular on Adam Weishaupt, founder of the Order of the Illuminati. According to Baruel, the French Revolution was orchestrated by Freemasons and philosophers like Voltaire and Montesquieu. We'll get back to Baruel in a later stage, so remember his name. Napoleon's advisor was a Jesuit, Emmanuel Sillet. He advised Napoleon on where to go and what to do. In today's language, we would call Sillet his handler. According to many historians and researchers, the Jesuits were the ones who orchestrated and directed the French Revolution and the outcome. Napoleon was a Masonic Grand Master. He was chosen and initiated by the order to play a key role in their planned revolution. Napoleon's brother, Louis Bonaparte, was made Grand Master of the Grand Orient of France. His wife Josephine was a member of the Mason Rite of Adoption. Under Napoleon's rule, the number of lodges in France grew from 300 to 1,220. Napoleon was a puppet of the cabal. We were led to believe he was the front man, but he was not. The hidden hand that some historians believe was to cover an ulcer, seriously, was actually a common Masonic gesture called the sign of the Master of the Second Veil. Many world leaders have shown this sign throughout the ages. The French Revolution started in 1789 and lasted for 10 long and bloody years of absolute terror. It was the master plan of the Jesuit Council to take revenge on France, to destabilize the country through war, and to destroy the French crown. Their tool? The Jacobins, an extremist political movement founded by none other than Napoleon's advisor, the Jesuit Sieyès. The Jacobins caused mayhem across France, rioting, plundering, murdering everyone who stood in their way. They left behind a trail of death and destruction wherever they went. The Jesuit plan worked. The guillotines worked overtime. The Jesuit order is the most dangerous of all orders. It has caused more harm than all other orders. The doctrine of the Jesuits entails that their supreme general is the sovereign of sovereigns and master of the world. After the French Revolution had ended, the Napoleonic Wars started. They caused even more instability and destruction, not only to France, but to the many countries Napoleon invaded: Austria, Russia, England, Prussia, Portugal, and Spain, where the royal family was kicked out and Napoleon's older brother was put on the throne. Each and every country that had once banned the Jesuit order and the Khazarian Ashkenazi Jews was now in ruins. This was one of the order's most dominant passions: revenge. During the Napoleonic Wars, the Illuminati alliance deployed their most successful strategy. They financed both the French and the English army. It simply didn't matter who won. War was an absolute revenue model. It was the Duke of Wellington who fought Napoleon and who defeated him at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815. Nathan Rothschild, a brilliant and ruthless businessman, had his spies at Waterloo, and he had a private courier system, as he knew that fast communication was vital in business. When it was clear that Napoleon had been defeated, the message was immediately sent to Rothschild, who received the news 2 days prior to anyone else. He then made a brilliant move at the London Stock Exchange. Instead of buying English bonds, the gilts, he sold those he had. The other traders noticed and drew the erroneous conclusion that Napoleon must have won the war. They immediately sold their bonds as well, causing the gilt price to drop dramatically. That was the moment Rothschild made his move. He bought all the gilts he could lay his hands on at a very low price. By the time the others had noticed and frantically started buying again, Nathan Rothschild was excessively rich. The King of England, George III, was now heavily indebted to Nathan Rothschild, who had financed his wars. Not only had the king to pay back his debts, he had to pay interest on top of it. He was now in the pocket of the Rothschilds. I care not what puppet is placed on the throne of England to rule the empire. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control the money supply. Next, 1914. The Illuminati Alliance, that we shall refer to as the Cabal from now on, simply because it's short and to the point, caused World War I, a war initially solely between Austro-Hungary, a dual empire of Austria and Hungary on the one side, and Serbia on the other. What happened? The ruler of Austro-Hungary, Emperor Franz Joseph I, had no successor to the throne, as his only son had committed suicide. His nephew, Franz Ferdinand, became heir to the throne. But his ideas about politics were very different from his uncle's. Franz Ferdinand wanted to decentralize. He wanted autonomy for the various ethnic groups. He wanted to incorporate Serbia into the dual empire as a political entity equal to Hungary and Austria. He was a thorn in the eye of his uncle, the emperor. Although raised in the Jesuit image of his father and uncle, he had a mind of his own. He refused to adopt his uncle's political vision, and he married the woman he loved, which was so not done within the elite. At the time of extreme internal unrest, the emperor sent his nephew to the border with Serbia, where he and his wife Sophie were murdered. According to the official narrative, it was the Serbian Gavrilo Princip who pulled the trigger, and so Austro-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Germany joined forces with Austro-Hungary. England, France, Russia, and later Italy, Romania, Bulgaria, and former Turkey, the Ottoman Empire, came to the aid of Serbia. We all know the results. 4 horror years in trenches, 9 million killed. Germany was in ruins, and that was precisely what the Jesuits had aimed for, as Germany was mostly Protestant. You may remember what it said in the Jesuit oath about Protestants. They would do absolutely anything to destroy their horrible race forever. Some historians may question or even deny the Jesuit background of the rulers of Austro-Hungary, which is odd, as they were prominent members of several Jesuit suborders, such as the Supreme Order of Christ. Emperor Franz Joseph was so high up in the Jesuit council that he was authorized to grant titles such as Prince and Grand Master. In 1880, for instance, he granted this title of Prince of the Holy Roman Empire to the Grand Masters of the Order of Malta. He even founded his own order, the Imperial Austrian Order of Franz Joseph. I promise to go deeper into these orders, plus the evidence of their Jesuit connection, in a later episode. For now, we'll leave it here, as we don't want to get lost in history. After all, we still have to cover the Russian Revolution and World War II, in a way it wasn't brought to you in school, I promise. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation does not need much introduction. Bill Gates is one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the world. Let's have a look at the way Mr. Gates is presented to us all. He is the most powerful doctor in the world. He is invited to G20 meetings and all other top-level gatherings, where he is treated like a head of state. He is the savior of humanity and the earth. He is the embodiment of charity. He is a great example of the American dream. And he is a wonderful inspiration to us all. Where did this prodigy come from? Bill was born in a wealthy family, a family of influence. His mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, came from a powerful banking family. His father, William Henry Gates Sr., was an attorney. Bill Jr. dropped out of Harvard University. Worried about the future of her son, Mary helped Bill set up Microsoft. She used her IBM connections to set up a deal between IBM and Microsoft. In 1991, she arranged a meeting between her son and Warren Buffett, the multi-billionaire who took Bill under his wings. Both of Bill's parents were heavily involved in family planning and eugenics. His father served on the board of Planned Parenthood.
My dad was head of Planned Parenthood, and it was very controversial to be involved with that.
Bill openly and proudly talks about these things and how they were discussed over dinner. From an early age, he was spoon-fed with the ideology of eugenics. In his 30s, Warren Buffett added to this with his enthusiasm on the subject. Buffett's foundation, the Susan Thompson Buffett Foundation, is a massive financial supporter of pro-abortion activities and population control policies. It is the largest funder of reproductive health and family planning in the world. We hope that by now you understand that those are just fancy words for eugenics. So, Bill Gates, a Rockefeller descendant, as we have shown in our COVID-19 documentary, was pushed forward with one goal in life and one goal alone, and that was not computer programming. His role in this world was determined by his bloodline. He was to become the face of population control and depopulation within the framework of Agenda 21 and 2030. Let's have a closer look at the effects of our great benefactor's actions, shall we? Between 2000 and 2017, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation massively enforced their new polio vaccine on the children of India. 500,000 children under the age of 5 became paralyzed. The Indian people were furious, and as a result, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was thrown out of the country in 2017. Yet, less than 2 years later, they were allowed back in, and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi was awarded by Bill Gates for his efforts to reach the UN Sustainable Development Goals. There's nothing money can't buy. Isn't it weird that Gates got the opportunity in the first place to start his polio vaccination campaign in India, when taken into account that back in 2000 it was already known in the US that the oral polio vaccine frequently caused paralysis? In the UK, the polio vaccination program was stopped 4 years later, in 2004, because of this proven link between the polio vaccine and paralysis. Yet, the vaccination program was continued for 13 more years with devastating effects in India. Nobody said a word, not the UN, nor the WHO, nor the Dutch RIVM that was involved in the development of the vaccine. And most certainly not the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Finally, in 2017, when the damage was done, the WHO reluctantly admitted that the global explosion in polio was mostly caused by the mutated polio strains used in vaccines. Let me say this in layman's terms. Once there was a nasty virus. The WHO named it the wild polio virus. It paralyzed people, so the WHO asked its minions to create a vaccine, which they did. As a matter of fact, they created 2 types, one that had to be injected and one that only needed a few drops into a child's mouth. The droplets, also called the oral polio vaccine, were much cheaper to fabricate, so the poorest African countries got the droplets, and the not-so-poor countries got the ones with the needle. Business is business, right? All seemed well at first, and after many years, in 2020, the WHO and the CDC proudly presented to the world that the wild polio virus had officially been eradicated, killed, murdered, destroyed. Wonderful! But the droplets started causing major problems. Why? Because, according to the WHO, it contained a live, yet weakened, vaccine virus, activating an immune response in the body. However, the weakened virus did not die after the body had become immune to polio. It became stronger and started causing mayhem in children. Those who'd had the oral polio vaccine, the apparently harmless little droplets, developed identical symptoms to the original wild polio virus. They got paralyzed. At first, the WHO denied the allegations. It stated that this could only occur very rarely. But then, as the numbers of paralyzed children grew and grew and grew, they admitted it was due to what they called mutated polio strains inside the vaccine. They even gave it a beautiful new name, VDPV, vaccine-derived poliovirus. Wow, I'm sure those paralyzed kids are very proud to carry a disease with such a pretty name. Now please do not despair. As always, the WHO has a solution to everything. As stated on their website, the solution is actually quite simple. Everybody must receive the vaccine.
Let's make sure we vaccinate every child and end all polio for good.
The same vaccine droplets, the cheapest ones of course, the ones that caused paralysis in the first place, must be given to every child under the age of 5. Why? Because of the herd immunity lie. Together we can stop this virus. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? Was there any compensation for the 500,000 paralyzed children? No. Was the Gates Foundation prosecuted? No. What else? In 2002, the Gates Foundation introduced the Meningitis Vaccine Project, Men-Afri-Vac campaign, in which thousands of African children were force vaccinated. 10% of those children developed paralysis. Local newspapers printed articles about being nothing but guinea pigs for the pharmaceutical industry. Gates's actions were described as ruthless and immoral. Once again, it was clear how the UN's NGOs and the WHO were all in it together. The Meningitis Vaccine Project was a partnership between PATH and the WHO. It was funded with millions of dollars by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Then, in 2009, the Gates Foundation used their NGO called PATH to test their HPV vaccine on 23,000 tribal girls in remote villages in India. The HPV vaccine was said to prevent girls from getting cervical cancer. 1,200 girls had severe and chronic side effects, such as fertility disorders and autoimmune problems. 7 girls died. Thousands of girls suffered from severe convulsions directly after being vaccinated. The WHO admitted the vaccine could cause convulsions, but stated it would only affect girls with a certain gene, and so it would be quite rare, which totally contradicts this video footage.
I'm Ginny Blesky, and this is my daughter Mia, who's 12. On the 21st of September last year, 2016, she had the first HPV vaccination at school. The following morning she woke up and she couldn't walk on her legs, she couldn't weight bear, her legs were shaky, and she had burning in either side of her spine all the way up her back. But she deteriorated by the afternoon, so we recalled the on-call doctor, who said just go straight to A&E. We took her straight to A&E and they admitted her for a few days. We've done video diaries right from the first day all the way through up until now, and basically within days, about 10 days of Mia having the vaccination, she completely lost the use of her legs. A couple of weeks after, she lost the use of her body went. So for the last 13 weeks now, she's only been able to blink and speak. She can't use any of her limbs. She's incontinent.
We highly recommend you do some research before having your child get the HPV vaccine. There are quite a few excellent documentaries out there on the devastating effects that ruined the lives of many young girls. The vaccines have been developed by the big pharma giants Merck and GlaxoSmithKline. In 2012, this case was taken to court in India. The allegations were pressuring vulnerable village girls into the trial, bullying parents, forging consent forms, and refusing medical care to the injured girls. The case is still in the country's Supreme Court. We are now 9 years later and nothing has been done yet. If anyone is ever convicted in this case, it will be the researchers involved that were funded by Gates. Gates himself, his foundation, and even PATH and the WHO will, as always, come out with a clean sheet. PATH, by the way, is the NGO that is massively funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation with $3 billion. Its main focus is on family planning. That is population control, eugenics. PATH was set up in 1977 as PIACT, Program for the Introduction and Adaptation of Contraceptive Technology. 4 years later, it changed its name into PATH. I guess the original name made its population control focus just a little too clear. Oh, and guess what? The HPV vaccine is now available for boys too. I didn't know they have a womb. Oh wait, here's the official explanation. Boys may get oral cancer from the same virus, like throat cancer. Wow. I mean, you've got to admit, this is absolutely brilliant. Instead of only the girls, Big Pharma now gets to target all the boys as well. That is a 100% market expansion. Doubled revenues. Absolutely brilliant marketing. Next, in 2010, the Gates Foundation funded a trial with an experimental malaria vaccine made by GlaxoSmithKline. 1/5 of the children involved in this trial suffered from severe side effects, such as convulsions and paralysis. 1/5! 151 African babies died. Did you hear about this in the news? No. Then, in 2014, the Kenya's Catholic Doctors Association accused the WHO of chemically sterilizing millions of women in Kenya against their will by means of a so-called tetanus vaccination program funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Each and every vaccine tested by independent labs contained HCG, a pregnancy hormone that is produced when a woman is pregnant and that causes temporal infertility. After all, when you are pregnant, you don't want to become pregnant again, simultaneously with yet another baby, right? So the production of this hormone is a very intelligent move of the female body to make sure the baby can develop safely in the womb without being hassled by other fetuses. So, HCG causes temporal sterility. Why on earth was it in those tetanus vaccines? What was it doing there? Who put it in there? Is this what we are looking at here when we talk about population control and family planning? The Kenyan women who were pregnant upon getting the vaccine were told it would protect their unborn babies against tetanus. They were told they had to get 5 shots at 6 monthly intervals. Their babies never saw the light of day. They were spontaneously aborted. Interesting detail about this case is that the Kenyan government fervently denied that the vaccine had caused sterilization. President Uhuru Kenyatta must have followed the money. He does not exactly have a clean sheet. He stood trial in The Hague for crimes against humanity and was involved in several cases of bribery and corruption. A very easy partner in crime for Gates and the WHO, who have spent millions of dollars paying off corrupt governments of less developed countries to get a carte blanche for their vaccination experiments. In this particular case, the mainstream media and the notorious fact-checkers still try their utmost best to ridicule and deny this case, which we fully understand. What do you think will happen to them when all of this gets out into the open? In 2017, a research paper was published in multiple scientific journals, once again putting the vaccination trials in a very bad light. In the early 1980s, the WHO's UNICEF performed what they called a natural experiment in an urban community in Guinea-Bissau, a country in West Africa. Babies between 3 and 5 months of age were given a DTP vaccination. The study showed that vaccinated children had 5-fold higher mortality than unvaccinated children. In this natural experiment, vaccinated children had 5-fold higher mortality than not yet DTP vaccinated children. Hence, DTP may be associated with a negative effect on child survival. DTP was associated with increased mortality. Shocking as this may be in and of itself, the worst was yet to come. After all of these things could have been hiccups in the startup of something safe and benign, right? Well, no. In spite of being aware of these horrid effects, UNICEF continued the DTP program in Africa. An unknown number of beautiful babies died, their parents' lives ruined, but nothing was done other than burying the data and sweeping it under the carpet. For some reason, black lives don't really seem to matter when billions of dollars are involved. Business is business, right, Mr. Gates? In 2016, the Gates Foundation decided that the African chickens weren't fat enough. Not only that, their eggs were too tiny. Gates came up with a brilliant plan. Let's genetically modify chickens. The University of Wageningen and Hendrix Genetics, both from the Netherlands, invented a new chicken species made especially for poor African families. What a marvelous idea! And what a great philanthropist! Genetically modified chickens that no African family had asked for. According to Janet Mawiyo, president of the Kenya Community Development Foundation, the native chickens are great. They may look a little skimpy, but they taste terrific. And they are unvaccinated. Our chickens feed themselves in nature. If we get more of them, who's going to pay for the food? And who will pay for the vaccinations? She asked in an interview. Excuse me? Vaccinations? Are these genetically modified super chickens not perfect when they come rolling out of the lab? Obviously not. They have to be vaccinated. That explains why the Dutch research supervisor, Lisbeth van der Waay, said, "The chickens must come with a clear manual. They need good food and plenty of water. If not, the production will probably be disappointing in practice." So, genetically modified chickens that need special food and vaccinations. Gates was delighted. In a press conference, he stated that 100,000 chickens were going to be donated to the poor in Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Tanzania. He tried to give them to Bolivia too, but they didn't want them. As a matter of fact, the African people didn't want them either, as Janet Mawiyo pointed out. But for some reason, Bill Gates always gets what he wants in Africa. Genetically modified chickens, vaccinations. It seems like he has built up a great relationship with the mostly corrupted leaders of those countries. Oh, and the chicken story had a little tail to it. Shortly after Gates had introduced his super chickens, the bird flu erupted. In Nigeria alone, more than 750 outbreaks led to 3.5 million dead chickens. Coincidence? You tell me. At any rate, all of those lost chickens had to be replaced by Hendrix Genetics from the Netherlands. I sure hope they offered them at a special discount. Oh, and the man in charge of the genetically modified chicken project at Wageningen University, Johan van Arendonk, promoter of the thesis we showed you less than 3 minutes ago, was welcomed by Hendrix Genetics as Head of Research and Development on the 1st of January 2016. Four years later, he was promoted Chief Technology and Innovation Officer and part of the Executive Committee. That's how it works, my friends. First, you get several millions from the Gates Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation to research the possibilities for a new chicken breed in several African countries. Of course, you accept the assignment. You set up a research program that is carried out by several African assistant researchers under your supervision. Research papers are published, and Mr. Gates is no doubt satisfied with your research findings and, as such, the business opportunities you offered him. So, what follows is a promotion. Off you go to Hendrix Genetics, where you receive another 9 million from Gates to genetically create a new breed of chicken. The moment you accept the job at Hendrix Genetics, you are in Gates's pocket. You will make whatever he wants you to make. It doesn't matter if your creation can only survive on good food, clean water, and vaccinations. Who cares? Nobody will know. The mainstream media won't say a thing. Who cares about the coincidental outbreak of the bird flu within a month after the delivery of your creation? Who cares that thousands of African people were devastated, ruined? They didn't have the money to buy more of your super chickens, nor their high-quality food, nor all of their future vaccinations. They had nothing left. But then again, we're talking about Africa. Nobody cares about Africa, right? The mainstream media remained silent, as always. Well, they reported the bird flu, of course. Yet another great opportunity for Bill Gates to develop yet another vaccination project. Because that, dearest viewers, is what Africa needs. It doesn't need clean water, nutritious food, or schools. It needs vaccinations. Chickens are not the only animal species that fascinate Gates. So do mosquitoes. Well, actually, he hates them, just like anybody else, as some of them spread diseases such as Zika and malaria. And so, Gates came up with yet another brilliant plan to improve the world. He paid the British company Oxitec millions of dollars to develop a program to genetically modify mosquitoes. Oxitec developed a modified version of Aedes aegypti, the mosquito responsible for transmitting Zika and dengue fever. The males were genetically tampered with and received a self-limiting gene, targeting only the females, the ones that sting for blood, and by doing so spread disease. When the GMO males mated with the wild females, the self-limiting gene was passed on to their offspring, killing only the females. After several generations, there would only be males left. In an of itself a brilliant plan and quite a gentle way to wipe out an entire species of mosquitoes. Several trials were held in India and in Panama, after which the first official grand release took place in Brazil in May 2018. Millions of genetically modified mosquitoes were released in a city over a period of 27 weeks. The results seemed promising at first, and the Gates Foundation made sure the press released articles about its immense success. But after a year and a half, the genetically modified male mosquitoes were having a ball with the natural local female mosquitoes, and billions of hybrid baby bugs were born to pester the inhabitants and to continue breeding like there was no tomorrow. The self-limiting gene was not doing what it was supposed to do. The result was disastrous. The species had only become stronger than ever before. Did you hear about this in the news? No. It can only be found by reading long and boring scientific papers that nobody tends to do. Only a few alternative media reported it, but as always, they were ignored, overruled, and ridiculed as conspiracy theorists. Instead of abandoning this sinking ship, Bill Gates took it a step further. He asked Oxitec to genetically modify yet another species, the females of Anopheles albinmanus, 1 out of 4 mosquito species that can transmit malaria. Trials were held in Burkina Faso in Africa. The locals resisted. They asked for mosquito nets, a cheap and very effective solution. But, as always, they were not heard. Why is it always that these experimental trials are held in less developed countries? Don't these lives matter? Now, even though the idea of no more mosquitoes may sound appealing to many, everyone who understands anything about ecosystems and the balance of nature knows that this is bad news. One does not play God and get away with it. Genetically modifying one kind of mosquito will have far-reaching effects on nature and thus on people, especially in rural areas where people depend on agriculture to survive. The entire ecosystem could end up disrupted in ways that cannot be foreseen. Now, normally, it would take years to pass an environmental law for these kinds of things. But because of COVID-19, the Environmental Protection Agency decided differently. Environmental laws will not be upheld at this point. The mosquitoes may be released. And this time, in Florida. And so, in the summer of 2020, swarms of genetically modified mosquitoes were to be set free. But due to public protest, it was put on hold. Now, I can hear people think, what's the big deal? The annihilation of mosquitoes, isn't that a dream come true? Well, it was, and still is, presented that way by Gates. But let's have a look at an article in Science from 2010. 11 years ago, a group of Japanese researchers developed a mosquito that spread vaccine instead of disease. However, the regulatory and ethical problems will prevent the critters from ever taking wing, the researchers stated. Yet, 3 years later, the US Army Medical Research and Development Command picked up on this idea in collaboration with the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They did not seem to be bothered with ethical problems. The study to turn mosquitoes into flying vaccinators was Gates's new target. And not just Gates's. Why was the US Army suddenly involved? Doesn't that point us in the direction of biological warfare? Now, for those viewers who believe that weaponizing mosquitoes is too far-fetched, please dive into the subject and you will find out that as early as 1953, the US initiated its weaponization efforts with disease vectors, as they called it, focused on fleas spreading the plague, mosquitoes causing brain infections by spreading encephalitis, and mosquitoes spreading yellow fever. Experimental trials were held over Florida and Georgia to see if the insects could be used successfully as a bioweapon to kill off urban populations. A declassified Army document from 1981 entitled An Evaluation of Entomological Warfare as a Potential Danger to the United States and European NATO nations describes in detail how the government raised millions of mosquitoes as weapons and released them in covert operations over US residents. Calculations showed it would cost only 29 cents per death if half of the population were to be killed. 29 cents per death! What a wonderful cost-effective way to execute a massacre. There's nothing new under the sun. For decades, armies all over the world have done these horrid experiments on their own and other countries' unsuspecting citizens. It didn't matter how many people died. It didn't matter if innocent children died. All that mattered was information. Which is gruesome in and of itself. But how does it make you feel that right now the Gates Foundation is involved in all of this? Of course, different target, modern-day equipment, but the idea never changed. How to perform genocide in the most efficient and cost-effective way. Depopulation with a capital D. Much of the collaboration between the Gates Foundation and the US Army is classified. From 2013 onward, not much can be found unless you have special clearance. Why am I not surprised? Oh, and Oxitec, the company that is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to develop the genetically modified insects, is tied to the US Army as well. Their current CEO, Ray Franson, worked for the US Department of State He was advisor to the US Navy. He wrote the first guide to non-governmental organizations for the military and is seen as an expert on NGO military relations. Furthermore, when he was president of All-Factor, a company similar to Oxitec, he signed agreements with the US military's Walter Reed Army Institute of Research for the military bases around the world to use All-Factor's technology. When a GMO company's technology is used by the Army and there is a direct link with the Biodefense Lab, Fort Detrick, Maryland, notorious for its covert biowarfare tests on US civilians to examine the feasibility of mosquitoes as vectors for bioweapons, you can rest assured that the company and its president were up to their ears in the development of GMO bioweapons. That same man now runs the mosquito show in Florida as president of Oxitec with the money of Bill Gates. If Gates is working on a better world, do you really think some of his projects were classified? Why on earth is he spending millions of dollars on genetically modified bugs that can be and have been deployed to spread disease and to vaccinate people? Why the secrecy? Are we being used as guinea pigs for more military tests? And why Florida? Is there a connection with the eeny-weeny tiny super drones that look like mosquitoes? Back in 2018, there were headlines about the race between the US and Russia to be the first manufacturer of the unmanned aerial vehicle, the UAV, or micro-aerial vehicle, the MAV. Using nanotechnology, these little drones can be deployed against people during, for instance, peace protests. Equipped with a camera and a microphone, they can land on you, take samples of your DNA, or leave tracking nanotechnology on your skin. Strategic analyst Paul Buchanan told NBR in July 2018 about the interest in UAVs. The predictions were that the UAV industry could be worth $89 billion by 2022. Somehow, we find it hard to believe that our philanthropist Bill Gates has nothing to do with these insect drones. It's probably only a matter of months before he comes out with yet another interview promoting the infinite possibilities of the nanobugs. In June 2020, Bill Gates talked about his surprise that so many people don't trust his good intentions, especially when it comes to vaccinations. We're just giving money away, he said. We just write checks to pharma companies. Up until April 2020, the WHO's biggest sponsor was the American government. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was number 2. When President Trump put a halt to this funding, Mr. Gates became the WHO's biggest sugar daddy. He owns the WHO.
Halting funding for the WHO during a world health crisis is as dangerous as it sounds. The world needs them now more than ever. Well, the truth is the group actually needs Gates more than ever. With the U.S. taking a pause, he'll now be their largest active donor. That's right, 1 out of every $10 that the WHO gets is from the world's second wealthiest man. So should we be concerned about how much one man has maybe an outsized influence with an obviously corruptible entity such as the WHO? Joining me now.
He's treated like a head of state, not only at the WHO, but also at the G20. He is one of the most influential men in global health. The Foundation's impact on the WHO is enormous. If they weren't there, if they walked away with their money, the deleterious impact would be profound, and everyone is all too aware of that. The WHO is owned by Bill Gates. Its Director General, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus, is nothing but a puppet. His strings are pulled by Gates and the Clintons. In 2018, yet another scandal came to light. Here's what happened. Before Tedros became Director General of the WHO, he held two high-level positions in the government of Ethiopia, Minister of Health and subsequently Minister of Foreign Affairs. He became very friendly with the Clintons and a speaker at the Clinton Global Initiative of the Clinton Foundation. And he was board chair of the Global Fund. The Global Fund presents itself as an independent organization that aims at eradicating AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria. While Tedros was chair of the Global Fund, the organization was involved in scandals about fraud and misappropriation of funds. An investigation showed that 67% spent on an AIDS program in Mauritania was misspent. And Mauritania wasn't the only country that missed out on a lot of money. According to financial investigators Larry Doyle and John Moynihan, we are looking at a classic example of money laundering. Here's how it works. The Clinton Foundation received millions of dollars from poor countries, such as the Dominican Republic, Rwanda and Lesotho, which is rather strange, don't you think? I mean, aren't those countries supposed to be on the receiving end of the cash flow? Anyway, those countries received money from the Global Fund. The Global Fund then received millions of dollars from USAID via the State Department. Who oversaw those funds? None other than Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The Clinton Foundation subsequently received millions from the Global Fund. Indeed, money laundering at its finest. Doyle and Moynihan testified before Congress about the corruption in the Clinton Foundation, in which the Global Fund, at that time chaired by Tedros, our current President General of the WHO, played an important role. The same Tedros who is now telling the world what to do about COVID-19. Funny world, isn't it? Additives in food, water, beauty, care and cleaning products. It may be hard to fully grasp, but the cabal seriously thought of all possible strategies to bring the masses to their knees. By design, purposefully, our food and water have been poisoned with substances that cause cancer and destroy our nervous system. "75% of the adverse reactions to food additives, which have been reported to the FDA, are connected with aspartame. Those reactions include headaches, migraines, dizziness, convulsions, nausea, muscle spasms, weight gain, rashes, depression, fatigue, irritability, vision complications, panic attacks, memory loss, and joint pains. It is considered that some chronic diseases can be triggered or even aggravated when using aspartame. For instance, brain tumors, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, birth defects, diabetes, and many more. If you wish to know more about the unsuspected approval by the FDA, the role of Donald Rumsfeld, and the ownership by Monsanto, please do your own research. It's quite easy to uncover the truth, especially with these 3 leads. More and more products turn out to be magnetic. Why? Can that be healthy? What on earth happened to those products? I mean, we ingest that. Does anybody know what it does to our body and mind? In many countries, for over 75 years now, our drinking water has been poisoned with fluoride, a highly toxic chemical waste product. Apart from being carcinogenic, fluoride has detrimental effects on the brain, the thyroid, and the immune system. Furthermore, fluoride is known for its destructive calcifying effects on the pineal gland. As the pineal gland is known to enhance intuitive awareness in people, one can easily understand why the cabal wants it closed, not open. Toothpaste. 95% of all branches still contain fluoride. Even today, the CDC will tell you fluoride is highly beneficial. Dentists still recommend parents additional fluoride treatment for their children. Yet, at the same time, toothpaste tubes read this warning sign. Keep out of the reach of children under 6 years of age. In case of accidental ingestion, seek professional assistance or contact a poison control center immediately. More than 80% of the cases of fluoride toxicity are reported in children below the age of 6. This is caused by the flavors added to children's toothpaste, which leads to voluntary swallowing of the toothpaste. Children under 6 years of age should not use more toothpaste than the size of a pea. Yet, this is what is shown in every commercial. If a 2-year-old swallows 2 tubes of children's toothpaste, nicely flavored, its chances of survival are extremely low. And just in case you thought that maybe the cabal forgot about your care products and cosmetics, I'm sorry to inform you that most products contain xenoestrogens, causing infertility and cancer, plus heavy metals like titanium, aluminum, lead, cadmium, mercury, nickel, and chromium in its carcinogenic state. And cleaning products? According to environmental experts, the average household contains approximately 62 toxic chemicals. Think ammonium, chlorine, and much, much more. Ingredients linked to asthma, cancer, reproductive disorders, hormone disruption, and neurotoxicity. There is no federal regulation of chemicals in household products. Neither ingredients nor products must meet any sort of safety standard, nor is any testing data or notification required before bringing a product to market. Next, GMOs, genetically modified organisms. We showed you in part 9 some of the problems around GMOs. When crops are genetically modified, they can be patented. That means that soybeans, corn, wheat, and basically every crop that was tampered with now belongs to someone. That someone made sure that these genetically altered crops do not reproduce in a natural way by producing seeds. This is what gives them a monopoly position on seeds and thus crops. Farmers are forced to buy the modified seeds each and every year. The modified crops need expensive pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers, all provided by the same companies, like Bayer. One bad season and farmers go bankrupt. The poisoned land is left with monoculture and thus exhaustion. The yield may look bigger and better, but it's actually carcinogenic. Ecosystems are disrupted. Insects die. Birds die. Desperate farmers die. The link to depopulation? People on a massive scale will die from cancer. And what is the long-term effect of the consumption of plants that do not produce any seeds? Has there ever been any research into the question what that does to the human reproductive system? Furthermore, the owners of the patented seeds can create shortage whenever they want, for as long as they want. Think famine, people dying of hunger. Control the food supply, and you control the people. Next, family planning. We've already shown you in part 6 what family planning entails and how it is used by the cabal. But our emphasis was on the less developed countries. How about the richer countries? How about you and me? We mentioned a new topic several times now, a topic that will shock you once we show you its statistics. I'm talking fertility, infertility, and our reproductive organs. We mentioned xenoestrogens and their effects on our reproductive organs. If you knew how many products that we use on a daily basis contain xenoestrogens, you'd be surprised that we can actually still procreate at all. Xenoestrogens are man-made chemicals. They can cause cancer and make you infertile. This is a well-known fact among chemists. Still, they are processed in a variety of products that we use on a daily basis, from care products to food and water. Why are those products still for sale? Why are we not protected by the FDA or our governments? You want to know why? Because they are part of the depopulation agenda. They are part of something so evil with such a sweet name: family planning. These chemical compounds can be found in commercial meat and dairy products, in anything that contains pesticides or insecticides residues, in artificial food additives, fast food packaging, tap water, processed foods, dryer sheets, plastic bottles, soft plastic used for baking, pacifiers, diapers, baby wipes, makeup, shampoos, conditioners, deodorants, mattresses and foam furniture, vinyl shower curtains, paper plates, plastic toys, air fresheners, scented candles, birth control pills, menstrual products, sunscreens, fleece clothing and blankets, even the ink on your receipts. They are everywhere. Xenoestrogens entering the skin, for instance by using care products, go directly to tissue without passing through the liver for detoxification. So they are 100% absorbed by the body and can be 10 times more potent than those consumed orally, for instance, through meals. Still, plastic-wrapped foods heated in the microwave contain some of the highest xenoestrogen levels. Remember that next time you heat your baby food in the microwave. Okay, you want statistics on infertility? To give you a general idea, 1 in 6 British couples have problems conceiving. The latest scientific studies have shown that in most cases, problems around conceiving find their origin in men, not just women. Since the 1970s, the sperm count in Western countries has dropped by 59%. Furthermore, erectile dysfunction is increasing, and testosterone levels are declining by 1% each year. Those men who seek medical help to fight their low testosterone levels can have their sperm counts drop to 0 while they're on it. The current state of reproductive affairs cannot continue much longer without threatening human survival. It's a global existential crisis. Worldwide fertility has dropped by 50% between 1960 and 2015. The United States has a total birth rate that is 16% below what it needs to replace itself. Rates of miscarriages are on the rise, and girls are experiencing earlier and earlier puberties, in some cases before the age of 8. In some parts of the world, the average 20-something woman today is less fertile than her grandmother was at 35. Today, the average male is nearing 47.1 million sperm per milliliter. Compare him to his father, who had an average of 99 million sperm per milliliter, and it's clear that this is a deeply worrying trend. It's no wonder that the assisted reproductive technology market is worth about $26 billion and is calculated to grow with yet another $10 billion in the next 5 years. Infertility doesn't just alter a man's ability to make children, it also increases his mortality risk. Infertile men die younger, according to a Stanford University study. Men with sperm concentration lower than 15 million per milliliter have a 50% greater chance of being hospitalized for any medical reason at all, and poor fertility has been linked with higher rates of heart disease and cancers. What a marvel of a chemical compound! You can put it in just about everything and it will slowly kill off the useless eaters. But on its own, it's not enough to depopulate the planet once and for all. Let's have a look at yet another element of family planning: abortion. We've already shed some light on Planned Parenthood and its illegal side activities, such as selling baby body parts and organs. Remember the number of babies they abort each year? In 2019, it was almost 350,000. And that's just Planned Parenthood. Only 40% of US abortions are performed by Planned Parenthood. Do you know what else Planned Parenthood is good at? Sex education. Planned Parenthood is the single largest provider of sex education in the United States, pushed by UNICEF, UNESCO, the WHO, and thus the UN. They arranged that children in kindergarten, or even younger than that, are now taught how to masturbate and how to sexually please each other. 5-year-olds know more about anal sex than you and me. Now please don't get us wrong. We are pro-sex education, and we do not believe in a sex taboo. After all, we are Dutch. But I mean, 5-year-old kids? Really? Children that young have no interest in sex yet. It's not natural. Planned Parenthood teaches very young children that sex is natural, wonderful, that it's all about equality and everything is permitted. Sure, they talk about consent, but do you really believe a 6-year-old or a 10-year-old knows anything about consent? Do you know what we're looking at here? We're looking at a license for pedophilia. Sex with a 10-year-old is called rape. If you don't believe that this entire movement was set up to normalize the sexualization and exploitation of children, we must tell you something about the Netherlands. We have an official political party for pedophiles, set up in 2006 and tolerated by the government. They have their own manual in which one can read how to gain a child's trust, how to sexually abuse it, and how to get away with it. When concerned citizens took the matter to court, the judge's verdict stated that the manual contained nothing unlawful, as texts about child abuse and child pornography are not prohibited by law. Pictures, yes, but not texts. Therefore, the manual was officially acknowledged by the government in 2019. Under pressure from the Dutch people, Grapperhaus promised he would change the law and prohibit the manual. But, as we speak, nothing has changed. The pedo-political party plus their manual are still acknowledged by Dutch law. The party's treasurer Van den Berg stated that rearing is also about introducing children to sex. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's precisely what Planned Parenthood keeps saying, instigated and financed by the UN. The entire LGBTQ movement was set up by the cabal, taken over by Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and thus financed by Soros. Not to advocate equality, but to sexualize and exploit children, to destabilize the family and create confusion. We are pro-equality. We are pro-gay rights. As a matter of fact, we want equal rights for every human being. To us it doesn't matter whether you're straight, gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender or queer. But leave the children out of it. It is not okay if drag queens include children in their shows, or when they read stories to young children in schools.
Literacy program. The goal is to get kids excited about books, and particularly books like gender fluidity and or about gender fluidity, and giving kids queer role models.
All right, so does anybody in this room know how to twerk? And then you just move your bum up and down like that, and that's twerking.
Readings take place at libraries, museums, and other cultural centers in more than 30 cities across the country. Some are small affairs, but many, like the one in Washington, D.C., play to full houses.
It's just really been obvious that there was a need for this in our community.
The library partnered with the D.C. chapter of Drag Queen Story Hour to bring the family-friendly events to the nation's capital.
We are grooming the new generation of Americans.
Lactatia is the devious diva you could ever think of.
Hello, my name is Nemes. I am 9 years old, and I am a drag princess named Lactatia.
It is not okay when parents talk their children into wanting to have a sex change. In countries like Australia and Canada, you can go to prison when you try to discourage your child from having a sex change. That's right. When your little girl comes home one day and tells you she wants a sex change, don't you dare ask her to wait a few more years until she's absolutely certain. You can get up to 10 years behind bars.
Boston Children's Hospital, which opened the first clinic for transgender youth in the U.S. Since 2007, they've treated hundreds of children and teens.
In the past couple of years, our volume has just about doubled.
Oh, and just in case you think LGBTQ is quite a lot to wrap your head around, it has now been extended and is actually called LGBTQIA+. This is now taught in schools. Recent studies have shown that more and more children are confused about their gender identity. Why are we not surprised? What we are looking at here has nothing to do with tolerance, acceptance, or equality. This is a political agenda. See the bigger picture? Family planning at its finest. Destroy the family and prevent procreation. Depopulation in yet another disguise. In the previous two parts, number 14 and 15, we spoke about depopulation tools. That's what they are to the cabal. Just tools, a means to an end. To us, the people, they are mere weapons. They are actual weapons of mass destruction. We have 3 left. Here we go, as we have no time to waste. Number 3 in our countdown. Chemtrails. Remember clear blue skies and white fluffy clouds? Neither do we. They disappeared several decades ago, when all of a sudden planes left strange lines in the sky that remained there instead of disappearing after a few minutes, which would be normal for contrails, condensation trails. These new trails, however, not only remain in our skies, they spread out to form a thin and all-enveloping cloud cover. This new type of trails, often raggedy on one side, were soon coined chemtrails, chemical trails instead of condensation trails. Years of testing went by. Chemicals were found all right, and to an alarming extent. Barium, cadmium, aluminum, titanium, strontium, lithium, heavy metals that are stored in our brains where they have proven to cause Alzheimer and Parkinson's disease. What on earth are they doing up there? People reported getting sick, having headaches, burning eyes, and feeling exhausted. After years of denial and ridicule by the authorities, chemtrails were finally admitted to exist. Not only that, we were told they were sprayed on us for our own good, to protect us from global warming. The thin cloud layer, formed by the heavy metal particles, reflects the sun back where it belongs, away from us.
Another example is the array of technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, or SAI, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat.
spraying that chemtrail? Yep. Feels like we're above it. I know. Oh, we'd be dead right now. I'm gonna put this on YouTube. It's like it's spraying out of the top of his wings.
The organized lack of sunlight causes vitamin D deficiency, which can cause weakened muscles and bones, depression, inflammations, high blood pressure, exhaustion, neurological and autoimmune problems. But hey, it's for your own good. Next, number 2 in our depopulation countdown, electrosmog. The invisible electromagnetic radiation from the use of both wireless technology and mains electricity. Every single day we are bombarded with electromagnetic fields. Most people don't have a clue what the effects are. Others can feel the electromagnetic radiation to the point where they get sick and barely function. Are they drama queens overreacting to something that isn't tangible? Well, no. Just because one cannot see, smell, hear, taste or touch something doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It can exist, and it can even be lethal. Take for instance carbon monoxide. Why do you think miners used to bring a canary down the mines? If it dropped dead, there was carbon monoxide. highly poisonous and potentially lethal. The miners climbed back to the surface as fast as they could. They knew, like nobody else, that something they couldn't see, smell, hear, taste or touch was capable of killing them all. It's the same with electrosmog. Do you even realize what you are exposed to on a daily basis? Think cordless phones, cell phones, baby monitors, cell phone towers and transmitters, wireless networks like Wi-Fi, microwave ovens, smart meters. We are talking electromagnetic fields. Why is it affecting us? Well, that's quite easy to understand when you realize that our human bodies on a cellular level have a tender electrical current of a picoamp. Picoamperes are the smallest current ever recorded. They are a trillionth of an ampere. Now, when you use your cell phone that is plugged into an electrical socket, it will send out a current of 0.2 amps. Forget the pico. This is 200 billion times stronger than what our bodies are used to in their natural state.
Phone charger plugged in. Right? What's what happen when I plug it in? It becomes a transmitter for electric. Right, and look how far it transmits, look. So if you're laying in bed with that next to your head, that is all going into your head. That's why I know. Watch what happens when I pick my phone up when it's charging. So that is going right into your body.
Furthermore, your cells communicate with each other at an incredible speed of 5 to 10 quadrillion electrical pulses per second. What happens when you interrupt that perfectly balanced electrical circuit with invading currents that are 200 billion times stronger? Then, apart from our own electrical current, we have an electromagnetic field. Now imagine you live in an artificially created field higher than this. Over time, your body will become distressed, trying to compensate for the effects of this greater electromagnetic field. As a result, your body will lose energy constantly to the point of illness and exhaustion. Let's have a look at one particular physical effect of high-frequency electromagnetic fields that most people can relate to: the production of a hormone called melatonin. Melatonin enhances your ability to fight cancer. It strengthens your immune system, and it is responsible for complete relaxation and sleep. In order for you to achieve deep sleep, your brain frequency needs to be less than 4 Hz. But electromagnetic frequencies in and around your house consistently interfere with this. As a result, your melatonin production decreases with up to 50%, depending on the amount of electrosmog in your bedroom. If you want to get up in the morning feeling great and fully rested and refreshed, you really need your melatonin. There's something else you need to know about this hormone. It is produced at night by the pineal gland in your brain. Remember what we said in the previous episode about the pineal gland? That the cabal really wants it damaged because it activates a greater awareness? Well, this is the second reason why the cabal hates full-functioning pineal glands in the heads of their useless eaters. It is so much harder to control and oppress healthy and energetic people than exhausted, unhealthy ones. So, disrupt deep sleep, and you got the people where you want them. Tired, weary, unstable, and thus unable to think clearly and to see how they are being abused, manipulated, and controlled. too tired to see through all the lies and to fight back. Decreased melatonin levels aren't the only effects of high-frequency electrosmog. More than 2,000 epidemiological studies have proven that it causes infertility, blood clots causing thrombosis, pulmonary embolisms, heart attacks and strokes, oxidative stress, damage to the blood-brain barrier, exposing the brain to foreign pathogens like viruses, altered electrical brain activity, and increased behavioral problems in children. Think ADD, ADHD, and autism. Alzheimer's disease. Damage to the central nervous system, causing, for instance, MS and ALS. Cell mutations and DNA damage. Chronic inflammation, weakened immune response, allergies, depression, and cancer. In 2011, the World Health Organization and the International Agency for Research on Cancer classified electromagnetic fields as possibly carcinogenic to humans, based on an increased risk for glioma, a malignant type of brain cancer associated with wireless phone use. Now, of course, you don't get cancer or any of the above overnight. This weapon builds up, bit by bit, day after day, night after night. We asked a group of Dutch researchers to measure EMF peaks in and around the house, and to investigate extensively what the effects of those peaks were on body and mind. Here's what they found. First of all, the peaks mostly took place at night when people are asleep, unaware of what they are exposed to. Secondly, to our surprise, most radiation was measured indoors, not outside and close to the towers, meaning the radiation spreads and intensifies in the electrical circuit of your home. All of your electrical equipment, think laptops, phones, TVs, lamps, electric blankets, coffee machines, fridges, ovens, everything working on LED lights, even the night light in your children's bedroom. Everything radiates EMF like crazy, day and night, especially when plugged in, especially during those nightly peaks, when everybody sleeps and doesn't notice a thing. Until they get up, that is. Then it starts, with restless legs, a dull feeling in the head, dizziness, pressure on the chest, pain between the shoulder blades, pain in the abdomen, stiffness and pain in joints and limbs, tinnitus, shortness of breath, coughing, nosebleeds, heart palpitations and intensified heartbeat, a feeling of heat inside the head and other parts of the body, a tingling or wobbling feeling throughout the body, headaches, and a lack of concentration during the day. A lot of those symptoms can be explained by the fact that your oxygen levels drop to a low directly after the electrosmog peaks. When your cells don't get enough oxygen, the results are detrimental for body and mind.
We are now entering the brave new world of smart meters. That means your electric meter will do so much more than just show how much electricity you use. The new smart meters are watching you. They sense all kinds of goings-on. They see when you turn something on or off. They see how many watts your electric toothbrush pulls. They send the record of that little event over wireless networks, bouncing through your neighbor's smart meters, all the way to the power company, where they keep record of all your electric consumption volumes and patterns every minute of every day, and store that data forever on computers that you'll never get to see. That data shows when you are at home, shows when you're sleeping, shows when you're on vacation, when you have visitors, when you use a lamp, a power tool, some extra computers, and if you look like you're running a business out of your home. It even senses when you bootleg energy off the grid. Your smart meter data shows a vivid profile of your personal living patterns and whether or not you were at home on the night of the murder. This is not electrical metering. This is personal surveillance. This is a search without a warrant every day. This is your personal private life going straight out through your electric meter to the power company, to the government, to the police, to the insurance company, to anyone who cuts a deal with your power company to look at your life under a microscope. Sorry, it's actually worse than that. People who don't cut a deal can get your information too by simply intercepting the wireless signal spewing from the side of your house. Yes, smart meters are radio transmitters. Here's how you tell. This one is a 1-watt radio station licensed by the FCC. On this all-news radio station, every detail of your electrical life is shooting off to some institutional data center somewhere. Already, the police in Ohio, Texas, British Columbia, and places I don't know about are regularly using smart meter data to pinpoint marijuana grow houses, enforce business licenses, and punish people for doing things in the privacy of their own homes that you were not supposed to do, but they wouldn't even know you were doing if they weren't spying on you. Your power company apparently gets to sell your personal life story to whomever it wants. Any unusual power consumption pattern is considered probable cause to raid you for growing marijuana or running a computer server without a business license. This is about as big brother as it gets. Those friendly men with their truckload of smart meters are going door to door with something a little different than a Christmas carol. My personal opinion is that you and I need to demand that these things be taken off our homes. It is not possible for your power company to claim they have the right to install a surveillance device on your house. Smart meters are no different from wiretapping devices. And in case you didn't know, wiretapping is illegal in all 50 of the states and the federal territories. If you let your power company put a smart meter on your house, you may as well walk around all day with a Facebook helmet webcam pointed at yourself. They have convinced themselves installing smart meters is lawful by some reaching to the moon jive called implied consent. If you say they can change your meter, they pretend you consent even when you don't know really what they're doing. Here's a tip. Tell them they can't change your meter. They had no trouble billing you with the old meter. If you send them a notice by certified mail that they may not install a smart meter or any other surveillance device on your house, their implied consent goes out the window. I would do that if I were you. In fact, I did that, and I'm not even you. Those friendly guys on the sidewalk told me that they plan to put a smart meter on every house in America. If they do that, it will no longer be America.
Now, of course, we're talking about 3, 4, and 5G as well. Millions of people are now concerned about the unrolling of 5G, but not many actually understand the exact problems. 5G is not a steady frequency. It is in development. Right now, most countries have 5G of 3.5 gigahertz. Not a big deal just yet, even though the effects on body and mind can already be felt, like we just showed. However, our governments have a plan for their 5G networks. They intend to increase the gigahertz from 3.5 to 28 to 60. 28 gigahertz is now at an experimental stage. 60 gigahertz is the near future. the entire Internet of Things, in which everything is interconnected through a wireless mega network, will be rolled out on 60 gigahertz. The future network of self-driving cars will need a complete infrastructure of Wi-Fi tunnels underneath your town, state, and country. Every 200 meters, on every street light, under every manhole cover, there will be Wi-Fi hotspots for 60 gigahertz radiation. The energy consumption will skyrocket. Millions of trees will be cut in order to maintain undisturbed data communication. 5G before climate change. Cut those trees and fry the citizens. For the last few years, and especially during the COVID lockdowns, countless 5G masts and transmitters have been placed on buildings, on high voltage masts and streetlights. The unrolling takes place in a highly undemocratic way, mostly in the middle of the night. Citizens have no voice. Masts and transmitters can be placed on the roof of your building without your consent. No guarantees of safety and security have been given to the people who live in those buildings or in the direct vicinity. According to experts, the problems surrounding 5G can be compared to those of the famous frog that was about to be cooked. Have you ever heard of this biological experiment? The frog doesn't notice a thing at first. He feels good and warm, all cuddled up in a pan with water. But the frog cannot see the fire underneath the pan. The water gets warmer and warmer. The frog is still comfortable, but as he gets hot to the point of being cooked to death, he doesn't move. He doesn't try to escape, because it is all happening gradually. He spent all of his energy adapting to the rising temperature. And so, he now waits for the horrid death he is about to experience. That frog, my friends, is you and me. 5G, from 3.5 all the way up to 60 gigahertz. Gradually. We are so busy adapting that we will not be able to escape when our boiling point arrives. At exactly 60 gigahertz, the electrons of an oxygen atom start spinning. As a result, the oxygen you breathe in can no longer be absorbed by your blood cells. In other words, when 5G is set on 60 gigahertz and released, we will literally drop dead within minutes. Hard to take this all in, isn't it? We promised one more depopulation weapon, because for some reason, in spite of all the above, we are still alive. Incredible when you think about it, isn't it? So, buckle up. Number 1 in our depopulation countdown in part 17. Vaccinations. Remember from part 14, there's one very important sentence regarding the so-called Spanish flu pandemic. Only the vaccinated died. This utterly shocking outcome of this vaccination trial, financed and executed by the Rockefeller Foundation, was the beginning of a massive depopulation program that, 1 century later, would become the ultimately perfected weapon to kill off millions of people. There is so much to say about this topic, but we'll try to keep it short. we'll give you 9 did you knows? Things we think you should know when it comes to vaccines. Please do your own research and check everything we present to you, okay? Here we go. Did you know that most diseases had already disappeared due to better hygiene when the various vaccination programs started? Did you know that babies in the US get 26 injections, 5 at a time, against 14 different diseases? Before they've reached the age of 18, they receive 14 more jabs, COVID not included. And did you know that of all those vaccination cocktails, no studies were ever performed by the medical establishment on their possible side effects? Not one? Did you know that the number of people with autism grows exponentially each year? It is estimated that this year more children will be diagnosed with autism than with AIDS, cancer and diabetes combined. It affects 1 in 54 children. The medical establishment strongly rejects a possible connection between autism and vaccinations. But how on earth can you wipe away a case like this?
Every day in our life was a party. Every single day they were holding hands and smiling and laughing and looking at each other, engaging in each other. On June 25th, 2007, we brought him in for the pneumococcal shot.
So just that shot?
One shot. We went in at 10 a.m. for the shot. By noon, Claire shut completely off. It was as if she was blind and deaf and complete failure to thrive, from super happy, smiley girl to, this is a picture of her. She had full-blown eye contact. She was super lovely, and she shut right down. And all she did at that moment was stare at the ceiling fan. So that was at noon. We had the shot at 10 a.m. 2 o'clock. We watched Richie shut off. All the giggles, all the smiles, it again, failure to thrive. They lost all their reflexes. They stopped blinking, stopped yawning, stopped coughing, stopped sneezing. So that was 2 o'clock. We watched Richie shut down, and I couldn't breathe. But there we go. The worst is when we saw the final one shut down. Robbie looked like he was hit by a bus. Robbie, from that moment on, had a stunned look on his face. He lost his happiness. This is a first year picture? First birthday.
3 months after the shot.
3 months after the shot. They were no longer engaged in anything or anyone. They lost their smiles. They just were in their own little separate worlds. They never held hands again. They never looked at each other again. Vaccine injury is real. We were told it was genetic. And then we were told by geneticists that there's no possible way 3 children would shut off on the same day. That was absolutely statistically impossible, especially being 2 boys and 1 girl. So we were also told we could not sue anyone. We were told we signed for that shot. No doctors could be sued. No vaccine manufacturers could be sued. So we had severe autism spectrum disorder for all 3 kids entering kindergarten.
What happened is we woke up one morning and we had 3 happy, healthy 9-month-old children. By that evening, we took them for a vaccination. By that evening, they were autistic. What we said to our pediatrician is, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do any more vaccinations until we know what happened here. What they said is, if you don't continue to do exactly what you did the day your children turned autistic, we're going to fire you from our practice. So
They broke up with us.
They broke up.
They sent us a lovely letter saying we were no longer welcome at their practice because we weren't going to continue well baby checks.
And that is the one decision that we'll never regret.
Mm-hmm. They can argue with families that your child, because it might be a single child, was genetic. They can try and put that back on the family and say somehow your genes are weak. But with us having 2 boys and 1 girl, they lose the argument with us, hands down. So we are the living proof that they're all lying.
Did you know that there is no autism amongst the Amish communities? Their vaccination rates are very low to non-existent. Coincidence? Dr. Frank Noonan, who has been treating Amish children for over 25 years, once said, "You'll find all the other stuff, but we don't find autism. We're right in the heart of Amish country and seeing none, and that's just the way it is." Dr. Dan Olmsted confirmed Noonan's findings. He called this phenomenon the Amish anomaly. Did you know that the American government has paid $4.5 billion as financial compensation as a result of vaccinations gone wrong? Mind you, not the vaccine producers had to pay for the damage caused. They made sure they are above the law with their non-liability disclosures. The American government paid, meaning the American taxpayer. Did you know that the exact same playbook was rolled out in 2009 for the swine flu pandemic and the COVID-19 pandemic in 2019? Everything was ready back in 2009, from face masks and quarantine to vaccinations. However, Wolfgang Wodarg, chairman of the Health Committee in the German Parliament and the European Council, spoke up. He showed the world that the big pharma vaccine producers had intentionally spread fear and panic about a relatively mild disease. According to Dr. Wodarg, they had tempted the WHO into defining the swine flu as a pandemic. He branded the H1N1 outbreak as one of the greatest medical scandals of the century. He said, "We have had a mild flu and a false pandemic." What does that remind you of? Is this why the COVID pandemic was necessary? Because Dr. Wodarg disrupted their narrative? You might ask yourself, where was Dr. Wodarg in the COVID crisis? Oh, he was there all right. He spoke up, time and again, as we've shown you in our COVID documentary. But this time the cabal was better prepared and used their propaganda machine, the mainstream media, to the fullest. The people were brainwashed into believing the narrative more than ever before, and Dr. Wodarg's voice got lost in the endless repetition of the fear-mongering media outlets. He was set aside and shamed as yet another tinfoil hat conspiracy nutter, deranged and dangerous to our society. Did you know that 58% of infant deaths occurred within 3 days of vaccination and 75% within a week? Now those are the official numbers, meaning the real numbers are probably even higher. Ever heard of the sudden infant death syndrome, also known as cot death or crib death? It is the sudden unexplained death of a child of less than 1 year of age. SIDS usually occurs during sleep. In the US, about 3,400 babies die of SIDS each year. The sad truth is that parents whose baby died of SIDS were often accused of killing their baby by shaking it or by smothering it. Many of those parents ended up in jail. Many were innocent. Can you imagine the horror? First, your precious baby dies. Then you are accused of its death. Any possible connection with the vaccination the baby just received is fervently denied by the authorities. You are sentenced to several years in prison. Your family is destroyed, and you get the blame. God knows how many parents had to go through this hell and never fully recovered from it. When you hear what's actually in those vaccines, you will understand that the correlation between SIDS and vaccinations is not based on coincidence, as the CDC wants us to believe. Not only that, it is well known by the authorities and the vaccine producers. Now, if this doesn't make you mad, we don't know what will. So, here we go. Number 9. Did you know that the following adjuvants are used in vaccines? Thimerosal, a mercury-based preservative. For years, pro-vaxxers have been trying to deny the use of mercury in vaccines. Yet, thimerosal, and thus mercury, is present in the following vaccines. Also, DTaP vaccines are still recommended and administered to pregnant women. This slide is actually just a summary. This is the official list of risks. Feel free to pause. May be fatal if swallowed, inhaled, or in contact with skin? Can anybody please explain to us why we inject this poison into children? Then, our second vaccine ingredient, formaldehyde, an embalming fluid, present in the vaccines against Still, the CDC assures the public that the small amounts of formaldehyde in vaccines are safe, but offers no studies to back such a claim. When the entire childhood vaccine schedule is taken into account, a child will have had almost 1,600 micrograms of formaldehyde injected into its body by the age of 6. Why the heck add an embalming fluid to a vaccine? Then, aluminum, yet another heavy metal, used in vaccines against On day 1 of life, infants receive 17 times more aluminum than would be allowed if doses were adjusted per body weight, which they are not. At the current time, there are no known or published studies specifically defining levels of aluminum in any vaccine product based on safety studies of aluminum. According to the FDA's guidelines, 850 micrograms of aluminum is what is deemed safe for an adult. However, the amounts of aluminum a tiny infant receives drastically surpasses the safety levels. Following the current vaccination schedule, an infant gets 1,225 micrograms of aluminum by 2 months of age, and 4,925 micrograms by 18 months. Furthermore, a safe level of aluminum has never been established for infants and children. Then, fetal tissue. Vaccines must be grown in a substrate, which simply means that it takes living tissue to grow the microscopic vaccine ingredients. For decades, that living tissue has been aborted fetus cells. This is common knowledge, but not many people know that an Italian research study performed by Corvelva showed that the MMRV vaccine manufactured by GlaxoSmithKline contained an entire human genome. Now, the maximum limit of fetal DNA in vaccinations is set on 10 nanograms. This MMRV vaccine, however, went 325 times over that limit. This is both insane and outrageous. These so-called fetal cells are only used to grow viruses. Excuse used by vaccine manufacturers has turned out to be a plain lie. More studies have shown that vaccines contain unacceptably high levels of fetal DNA fragment contaminants. Oh, and by the way, this particular MMRV vaccine gave the researchers of Corvelva an extra shock. Not only did they find an entire human genome, they also discovered as good as no rubella virus, which should have been there. Instead, they found an alarming amount of bacteria and viruses that should not have been there, some of which carcinogenic. And on top of that, they discovered fungi, yeast, and worms. That's right. The stuff we inject into little babies contain retroviruses of humans and birds, other viruses of monkeys and horses, immunodeficiency viruses of humans and monkeys, in other words, fragments of HIV, and platyhelminthes worms. But hey, vaccines are safe. Then, cancer cells. Vaccines contain cancer cells for the exact same reason they contain fetus tissue. Cancer cells too are excellent nutrient mediums. They have the capacity to speed up the growth of whatever grows on them. But, just like we just saw with the fetal tissue, it goes further than that. There have been quite a few scandals in the past about full-on cancer cells in, for instance, polio vaccines, that of course were efficiently swept under the carpet by the mainstream media. Last but not least, nagalase, an enzyme that is secreted by virus-infected cells and by cancerous cells in the process of tumor invasion. Please take a moment to let that sink in. Let me repeat. An enzyme that is secreted by virus-infected cells and by cancerous cells in the process of tumor invasion. How on earth can that be good? Well, it can't be good. And it isn't good. Nagalase prevents the body from producing its best friend, the natural immune booster called globulin component macrophage activating factor. GCMAF activates macrophages, a certain type of white blood cells that attack cancer cells and other foreign invaders like a pit bull defending your body. But nagalase deactivates your pit bull. As a result, everything bad, like cancer, can grow in your body without limitations. High levels of nagalase have been found in patients with all sorts of cancer, autism, diabetes, immune disorders, plus viral and bacterial infections. Why on earth is this crap added to vaccines? Well, many doctors asked that same question. They started doing their own research and came up with the same shocking conclusion. Nagalase must have been added to the vaccines on purpose in order to slowly kill people. Not only that, they treated their patients with GC-MAF, the pit bull activator, and with outstanding results. Their research findings did not exactly receive a warm welcome. More than 100 American doctors who investigated Nagalase in relation to cancer and autism ended up dead, murdered, suicided. If there's one thing we have learned from all our research, it's that the vaccine mafia accepts no opponents. And those who stand out, for instance because of their former connection to that same mafia, and or for having a great amount of followers on social media, are silenced without mercy. Hard to digest, isn't it? And the list that we have presented, both in this episode and the previous ones, is far from being complete. What about electronic cigarettes and vaporizers? Do you believe they offer a safe alternative to normal cigarettes? Forget it. They have turned out to be just as harmful. Scientific studies have proven that e-cigarettes can cause cancer, heart problems, lung injury, and that they can damage and change your DNA due to the chemicals present in e-cigarette aerosols, like for instance formaldehyde and acrolein. And what about LED lights? Pushed and sold as energy-saving delights. Yet, the blue light in LED light bulbs radiates ultraviolet light that damages the retina of your eyes. It suppresses the production of melatonin by a factor of 5, causing sleep and mood problems. And it affects the cancer-fighting abilities of your body, remember? Did they tell you that at the store where you bought them, after your government had prohibited the sales of the good old-fashioned light bulb? And did you know that every big pharma product is based on crude oil? Every pill you swallow? Every candle that you burn contains paraffin, a waste product of the petroleum industry, releasing carcinogenic chemicals. And did you know that microwave ovens destroy all nutrients in whatever meal you put in them? Did you know mammograms contain so much radiation that one's entire breast is not only painfully squashed, but also exposed to an upgrade in one's chances of getting cancer? We could go on and on and on. Everything was done by design. There are no coincidences here. The cabal's deep desire to get rid of the vast majority of us has been worked out in detail in every branch of society, in every aspect of our lives. Whether we die fast through wars and disease, or slow by poisoning us, doesn't matter, as long as we're gone by 2050. Max 500 million may survive to serve as obedient slaves in a new world order under the King of Kings. So, how are they going to finish us off? The ultimately perfected weapon to kill off millions of people in one go has already been activated.